present For the Record with Neil Heinen.
Now more than ever, we are many united against hate. Next on For the Record. Thanks for joining us. I'm Neil Heinen. In a remarkably short period of time, Madison-based We Are Many United Against Hate has grown in influence and public awareness. A result, sadly, in part of the growing need to speak up for diversity and inclusion and against divisions and injustices. We have a half dozen members and supporters of We Are Many United Against Hate who will talk about their work today, including, of course, organization founder Masood Akhtar. For this segment, Masood and I are joined by Coalition of Wisconsin Aging and Healthcare Group CEO and United Against Hate Policy Chair Nino Amato, and advisory board member, former Republican State Senator Dale Schultz. Nino and Dale, thanks very much. Nice to see you. Nino, welcome back. Masood, welcome back. Tell me what's new.
Well, thanks for having us again here. Quite a few exciting things have happened since we met last time here on your show, particularly related to the educational focus area that we have. Yep. We have been going continuously at different high schools and colleges now, getting a lot more traction, looking at, understanding a little bit what's happening there in terms of looking at the root causes of hate there in the specific school, because it depends on which school you go to, understanding what's out there in the best practice and try to include that into their curriculum so that we can solve that problem. We have a relationship that we build with the Department of Public Instruction. We are looking at a statewide approach of what really needs to be done in terms of root causes. And obviously recently, as you know, we have been recognized at a federal level by, receiving a 2018 FBI Leadership Award for the work that we do.
Pretty remarkable recognition.
Recognized for that. Recently, I've also been appointed on a board of Wisconsin Public Television, where my role is going to be make sure that these underserved communities are represented properly, whether we increase the internship for those or success story sharing and those kinds of things. So we're very excited about it. But today, I think we're going to focus on some second area.
Well, I mean, other than the power of Masood's personality,
really,
I mean, We Are Many United Against Hate has, as I suggested, really grown. And in policy areas, Nino, you've identified some specific policy areas.
First, let me say, I thought I was high energy, but this guy has us all beat. Let me just say that when the first initial meeting occurred at the Monona Terrace, where 4,000 unexpected people showed up, we've spent a lot of time, all the advisory board members, interacting at high schools, middle schools, all over the state. And so we have been wrestling with what key policies we can come up with. So it's taken about 2 years to really flesh this out. So without stealing the thunder from some of the other members who will speak, one of the ones that is now coming back, and you might recall this, but when we had the task force on race relations and racial profiling, we were one of the first to collect data. Local law enforcement, then the county adopted it, then the state adopted it, and had it go across all of the law enforcement agencies. And then unfortunately, with a new governor in 2011, he withdrew the funding. So we're saying is we now need to go back. We need to have a data collection that basically will support all law enforcement so that people don't have to worry about driving while black, brown, or yellow. And what that data really does is doesn't make the officer guilty. What it does is shows a pattern of what may just be ethnic discrimination, and we need to address it. And another area, too, that's growing is having taught at UW in the last couple of years, a lot of my students get pulled over because the officer thinks they're young, they must have drugs. 2 of my students were late for exams because they brought out drug dogs. So, there's this atmosphere right now that really is scaring people. And it's almost like it's almost gone too zealous. So we're going to get out there and talk about how we need to work together, how we can collect data and make corrections.
And when we say scaring people, Dale, we're talking about a broad range of people.
Absolutely.
I mean, I hate to put you in the token conservative category here, but I think it's important that you speak to the bipartisanship, the nonpartisanship of this work.
Well, what I would invite people to do is to Google Ronald Reagan's farewell speech to find out what a real conservative is about. Talking about that shining city on a hill, talking about a welcoming nature towards immigrants, about immigration making us stronger, and profiting and being more and more satisfied with our lives as we interrelate and learn from each other. And I think that, to me, is what America has to get back to. I'm not sure how we ever got in this situation where it's all about how much fear you can stoke and how much hate, but I think all of us who have been involved know that we have to have an agenda that takes us on the offensive rather than just reacting and doing triage when terrible things have happened in communities around Wisconsin. And let me just say, I spent 32 years in the legislature, and I was intensely proud to represent the city of Reedsburg, which embraced Norman Rockwell, the most celebrated illustrator of the 20th century, and the cornerstone of his work, of which was the four freedoms, freedom of speech and religion, freedom from want and fear. This is the America that I think of when I think of where I came from, and I happen to be Republican, but I know that many Democrats embrace those same things. I know that Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in 1941 when he gave his freedom from fear of speech. So here you have Ronald Reagan and Franklin Delano Roosevelt. If we can't find common ground between those two men, then we truly are lost. And I don't believe we are.
I like that Dale has such ties to southwestern Wisconsin, but We Are Many is a statewide. It's a statewide effort. What do you hear?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of young kids living in fear because of the immigration targeting that's going on throughout Wisconsin. Yeah. You have hate groups up by over 500%. That's impacting everybody. I never thought in our time we would see kind of a reminiscence of what we had back in the 50s and 60s, and it's on the rise, and we're seeing signs that are pretty scary. So I think what Dale said is this is not a partisan issue, it's a nonpartisan issue. And if you take it one step further, even George W. Bush and George Horatio had an immigration policy that was all-encompassing, all-inclusive, and even George W. Bush after 9/11 says do not attack or be critical of Muslims because they are part of our American culture. So we're out there trying to balance it as best we can. And now we're going to move forward some policies that hopefully we can get bipartisan support in the state legislature.
Nino and Dale, thanks very much for joining us. When we come back, Masood and I will be joined by two more guests. We'll talk about religious tolerance and rebuilding the American dream right after this.
Boy, this goes fast.
For the Record, sponsored by MG&E, your community energy company.
Lease the all-wheel drive Infiniti QX50 for $379 a month. Plus, get a special summer bonus at your local Infiniti retailer.
Baking cookies, yeah, it smells great, but it doesn't sell houses. Me? I use Spectrum. We've got a remodeled kitchen, smart appliances, and what? Who left these here?
You're doing all that? All at once?
Oh, yeah. It's a Spectrum neighborhood. Why don't we check out the living room?
Get Spectrum Internet, delivering more speed, more consistently for better surfing, streaming, and gaming. Switch now for $44.99 a month. Call 833-278-4499.
Notice the high ceiling. Works every time.
Get Spectrum TV with more free HD and more free on demand from $44.99 a month. Call 833-278-4499.
The houses I've sold with Spectrum, I should be giving them a commission. I'm not going to do that.
Get Spectrum TV and Internet today from $44.99 a month each with no contracts. Call 833-278-4499.
Update your floors with Empire Today's $50 room sale. Buy one room, get floors for all other rooms for just $50 each. So when you buy one room, it's only $50 for laminate in the kitchen, $50 for carpet in the bedroom, and $50 for hardwood in the office. There's no limit. Buy one room, and it's $50 for floors in each additional room. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today.
We Are Many, United Against Hate founder Masood Akhtar and I are now joined by Charles Cohen, Gordon Fox, Professor Emeritus at the University of Wisconsin-Madison and an advisory board member of We Are Many United Against Hate, and fellow advisory board member, recent gubernatorial candidate, author for a show that yet to be determined on For the Record, Mike McCabe. Thank you both, Charles and Mike, for joining us. So these moves us into new policy areas here.
Yeah, so some of those, you heard about a couple of those policies area, but right now we're also looking at the other opportunities where we believe is very concerning, in the sense that, when we talk to some of these people who are recruiting these people, it seems like the economic insecurity is a big concern on that. So we're going to talk about a little bit of that, and Chuck is going to talk about the religious intolerance, how is that playing into this kind. So all of these things that we are focusing in these initial 4 areas are all related to combating hate, solving the problem. So
you've studied religion and the history of religion throughout your career, Charles. How does that fit into the vision of We Are Many?
Well, I used to run the Lubar Institute for the Study of the Abrahamic Religions at UW-Madison, and was very much involved in trying to develop ties both in the university and in the larger community between people of different religious traditions. And I've looked for this organization. My desire, my intense desire to join it is to continue that work. I think no one listening has to be reminded of the upspike in religious hatred against Muslims, against Jews. We can remember the attack on Sikhs a couple of years ago. And this organization is really dedicated to developing better ties among people, whatever their traditions.
Mike, when Masood said economic inequity and insecurity, I'm quite sure he was thinking about you, but the whole idea of rebuilding the American dream, thinking about your travels around the state, talk about the relationship between that and United Against Hate.
Well, there's an awful lot of people out there who are watching their American dreams downsized. You have factory workers who are making $25 or $30 an hour on the factory floor, and their jobs have been automated out of existence or sent overseas, and now the best they can find is maybe $12 or $13, $14 an hour. So they've seen their standard of living cut in half. That creates conditions that breed hate. The thing is, robots don't get hated. People do. And it's immigrants who get scapegoated. It's people of color who get scapegoated when this happens. And so one of the things we have to do if we're going to be serious about dealing with the underlying causes of hate is deal with economic insecurity and the financial instability that so many families are facing, and start to think outside the box as a society about how we address those kinds of things. And we've got to figure out a way how to get people a living wage so that when they work, when they put in that 40-hour work week, they actually don't live in poverty. And maybe we need to experiment on a test basis with something like universal basic income to create that security for people. And some of the ideas we try probably won't work. But we have to experiment with them to find out what works and what doesn't, and to see what can be expanded. It's forecast that 20 million manufacturing jobs are going to disappear by 2030 around the world, and robots are going to take over that work, and humans are going to be displaced, and 5 million people drive for a living. They drive trucks and buses and taxi cabs, and driverless vehicles are coming. And what happens to millions of people who drive for a living? We have to start thinking now about what's going to unfold by 2030 or by 2040. And if we don't do that and don't address those insecurities that people feel as they watch those American dreams downsized, we are going to deal with an increasing breeding ground for hate.
There are probably a lot of contributing factors to intolerance. Charles, are we more religiously intolerant now, historically speaking?
I think these things come in waves. I think the long arc of American history suggests that as a people we have learned to become more tolerant of each other, although the current situation is at least one and maybe two steps backward. It's a very difficult time. I think the values that we place as Americans on religious freedom and on letting people worship as they please, believe what they want or not believe if that's the case. I think those traditions are deeply rooted in our history. So I'm cautiously optimistic, and yet at the moment the flames of hate are being fanned for all sorts of advantage. And I think at the moment we're taking steps back.
Yeah.
I just have to add to what Mike was saying in terms of economic insecurity is that, you know, people all the time talk about unemployment is 3% or less, so we're very excited about it. But when you look at, when you go deep down and talk to people, there are reports and reports and reports that 40% of American people are struggling every day which bills they have to pay. And that is very concerning, that if you don't have those kinds of employments, whether they become the tool for these hate groups.
Thank you, Charles and Mike, very much. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about hate crimes, speech, and terrorism right after this.
Impressive summer value. The 2019 Subaru Impreza 2.0i now at Don Miller. The Impreza, loaded with safety features including eyesight driver assist technology and rear vision camera. Lease the Impreza 2.0i, $189 per month plus tax, no security deposit, $18.99 due at signing, or to 0.9% financing. The Impreza 2.0i, all-wheel drive plus MPG. Don Miller Subaru, west on Odana or east side, High Crossing Boulevard, Madison.
Don Miller.
We're out here. People who want to change the world, that is. People who are doing everything we can to fight and cure cancer. Are you one of us? Join us for the ride on September 22nd. All money raised supports new research in cancer treatments right here at the University of Wisconsin. Sign up at theridewi.org.
Do you suffer from chronic or severe back or neck pain? Did you know that there is now a treatment method available right here at Midwest Spine and Nerve Center that offers hope of avoiding spinal surgery for those suffering with bulging, herniated, or degenerative discs? Our therapies help reduce pain related to these conditions and have a high success rate in helping people just like you avoid back or neck surgery.
I've experienced low back pain for over 15 years. I had back surgery when I was 26 and had difficulties recovering. The doctors at Midwest Spine and Nerve Center have given me a new lease on life. I am now able to enjoy an active, pain-free lifestyle.
Call Midwest Spine and Nerve Center now to schedule a no-obligation consultation to see if our progressive pain-relieving therapies are right for you.
Finally talking about some much-needed relief in the forecast Monday morning.
And we're speaking with MPD about their connection with the community to help cut down on home burglary rates.
We'll see you Monday morning from 4:30 to 7.
We are many united against hate. The topic of For the Record again this week, a show that we're trying to do somewhat regularly with founder Masood Akhtar as we talk about the rise in intolerance and hatred in the United States and sadly in Wisconsin and in our viewing area. We're joined now by John Voudray, the former U.S. Attorney for Western Wisconsin and an advisory board member for We Are Many United Against Hate, and of course Dane County District Attorney Ishmael Ozan. And thank you both very much for joining us. The whole legal aspect of this, I think, gets overlooked. I mean, it's probably a little harder for people to wrap their heads around to understand, and yet it's really critically important. And I love the idea, John, that you have traveled explaining to groups what their rights are.
Thanks, Neil. It's what I do almost exclusively now, but I'll let Ish, I won't take too much time here. The point is that In this country, it's not a crime to hate. That's what's difficult for everybody to understand. It's a crime to act on that hate. And for law enforcement, that presents very, very difficult issues. My greatest fears that I still have from when I was U.S. Attorney is the lone wolf online in the basement spewing hate, talking about doing things, and law enforcement can't do anything because it's not against the law. I've done counterterrorism training in other countries. In Malaysia, for example, if you go online and you post a like of the ISIL flag, you're probably going to do 5 years in prison because their approach is to punish people for thinking and speaking. And I spend a lot of time talking about how we don't punish people for thinking or speaking. And to defeat hate and to wait for it to become a crime is a very difficult conundrum.
What do we need to understand, John, in terms of terrorism and white supremacy and the stereotypical portrayal of terrorism as Islamist?
Well, I think, and Masood and I have talked about this at length, a terrorist organization under federal law is exclusively have been out of the country organizations. And the difficulty with defining a white supremacist group, an online group of haters as a terrorist organization is that we are singling them out for their speech, for their thoughts. It is horrible speech, it's horrible thought, but it's not a crime to do so. So in our country, it doesn't become a crime to provide support to that sort of group, to tell them you appreciate them, you think like them, all these horrible things, in my view. It becomes a crime when you actually take action, and that's what we have to understand. We have to defeat how people think and how they feel, but you don't do it by just putting people in jail.
Right. District Attorney Ozan, are you needing to make more decisions now about what to prosecute in terms of hate crimes?
What I would say is we're seeing more hate within the crimes that are referred, and you're seeing that through potential language that is being used, through slurs. It seems as though there's almost been a green light given to some, or at least they think, to spout some of this information. For us, in Wisconsin, our hate crime enhancer, it's not a standalone crime, it's an enhancer on the actions that someone has done, the crime that they've actually committed. For us to charge it, we need to prove that all or part of that action and the selection of that individual, the victim, was done due to, it could be their race, their ethnicity, or the person's belief in their religious affiliation. It doesn't cover gender. Right now, we actually are, throughout our office, looking at our hate crime enhancer, looking at statutes around the country, and trying to understand, are we actually applying it? Can we do a better job of addressing some of the hate that we're seeing? But again, we have the right within this country to be, in a sense, as racist as we want, or as offensive as we want. We don't have the right to infringe on someone else's freedom or to actually cause them pain. And that is the nuance. How can we deal with law enforcement and have them give us an ability to address some of this hateful behavior? Depends on whether or not they can actually connect the pieces for us to show us what the motivation for that action was.
So much emphasis in criminal justice over the last many years. Ishmael has been over keeping people out of the system, addressing the root causes of some of these behaviors, diversion programs, options to, but with this type of behavior, with hate-inspired crimes, what approach can you even consider for your office?
That's a great question, and actually, one of the best approaches is restorative justice. And when we talk about the formal criminal justice system, you can be charged, you can be tried and convicted, and never have to say you're sorry, never have to actually address the fact that you actually caused harm to somebody else. But if you move through a restorative justice model, you actually have to take responsibility for your actions. You actually have to admit that you did something wrong, and you have to be put in a position that actually shows you the humanity of the person that you caused harm to. I mean, if you think about the first criminal justice system that we all were initiated into, our families, right? And when you were little, what was the biggest difficulty? It wasn't the punishment in the end. It was admitting to someone who you loved, who you respected, that you had actually done something wrong, that you actually had to own up to your actions.
Yeah. So, Masood, where is all this headed? What's next here for this?
So, couple things. Historically, what we have seen is that the minorities who are subject to this kind of hate and bigotry and racism have worked in silos. So Muslim issues are Muslim issues and talking to legislators. We want these minorities to change that and come out of their silos. So Jewish issues become Muslim issues become Jewish, and then Latinos and all of those have to come out, and some of those key representatives on our board. So we need to work together as a team to deal with this situation. The second thing is the public has to be engaged actively to send their message out wherever these people are located. And that's what we're asking public, that look at these policies that we came up with and help us organize some of these individual community events in their community and invite representatives of both parties to come together so we can address it in a proper way.
UnitedAgainstHate.org is a place where people can go, learn about upcoming events.
Absolutely.
A lot more work in the schools planned, I assume?
Yes, it's working all right. We got a couple other schools lined up in Oshkosh area. There are 2 schools that we are working with. Universities, campuses are coming along. And so all of these things are moving along pretty nicely as we imagine. So,
John Ish, nice to see you. Thanks for doing this. Masood, as always, we're going to come back and wrap up For the Record right after this.